Hi there, I'm Alex Blinsky, and I'm excited to share a ton of crazy, spiritual, and funny stories, all from the Japan Sendai mission. I hope you enjoy. Kirk. We never really have the crazy or dangerous experiences with crime, as Japan is an extremely safe country. However, the earthquakes can sometimes be a bit frightening at first. The most dangerous thing I experienced was riding my bike on the snow and ice. Sometimes I'd strongly against doing it. I'd strongly advise against doing it. Eric, Japanese roads and sidewalks are very narrow, so you have to be careful when you navigate them. Sendai was a biking mission, and I managed to stay out of accidents for the most part, but I got into a pretty bad one in my second area. My companion and I were rushing to the store on our bikes to buy something for our English class, and we pulled up alongside a high schooler. My companion whizzed by him, but I wasn't so lucky. As I veered around the kid, he suddenly turned into me, and we both went flying into the pavement. He landed on top of me and got out of it without a scrape, but my pants, jacket, knees, hands, and elbows got destroyed. I'm just grateful we didn't land in the street. Kevin, my companion and I were racing on our bikes to catch a train to a branch activity. I was in the rear. At that point, we were on the sidewalk for some reason. A car pulled out of a grocery store and I broadsided it, flew over the bike and the car, doing a complete somersault, and mostly landed on my feet. I was okay, but my bike frame was bent, along with the handlebars, and of course, both wheels. My companion never knew what happened, and kept going until he reached the train station and discovered that I was missing. I walked back to the apartment and eventually met him there. We fixed the bike somewhat and rode back to the station to catch the last train. The other companionship held the train for us, which made it several minutes late. Needless to say, the conductor was more than a little unhappy. He made an announcement over the speaker system notifying everyone about the unintelligent Americans who held up the train. Not our finest moment. Kyle. Riding my bike down ice-covered roads. Michael. Our mission was closed after the March 11th earthquake and tsunami in 2011. We were evacuated to the mission to the north, Sapporo, Japan mission. Best rice in all of Japan is rice from Niigata, Kuishi Ikari. It is no longer part of the Sendai mission, but a close second would have to be rice from Akita. Troy. Racing the buses on our bikes. They like to sneak up on us and honk to scare us. Christopher. I got hit by two cars. Both drivers were distracted. On one I had to knock on the windshield to get the woman's attention. Darren. Yakuza dudes trying to muscle in on me when they only came up to my shoulder in height. That was funny. Eric. I served in Yokote, which was the smallest city in the mission that had missionaries in it. Because it was so small, we also had members in the city to the north and south, about an hour bike ride away. Riding along the road between them with cars rushing by could be frightening. Morgan. Racing from the top of the hill headed toward Hombu. If you timed it perfectly and went fast enough, you'd make it to the bottom without having to stop. Colby. Having a strange person enter the street then disappear shortly after. One investigator's house was there one day and gone the very next when we went back. Found ourselves stuck in the creepiest hall of apartments and thought we saw a ghost. There are actually a lot of disturbing and strange things I experienced, most of which I'd rather not write about, but I never felt in danger of harm and always protected. Paul. Riding bikes on icy roads all winter. Christina. Walking home during a tsunami storm. The wind was blowing so hard that our bikes lifted from the ground. We had to walk crouched to the ground, gripping tightly on our bikes in order to make it home. Things were ripping up around us, and it was incredibly dark. We were also unfamiliar with the area. I've never experienced anything quite like it. I also was in Japan during a larger earthquake. The neighboring area was hit hardest, but my companion and I were in the store when it occurred, and the entire building shook, swayed for some time. Joseph. Falling down frozen steps, one story in Hachinohe. Saori. Some creepo tried to invite us into his apartment. We felt really scared and left. Teresa. Riding on bikes in pouring rain or blizzard snow, not being able to see farther than your companion's bike in front of you. We walk by faith, not by sight. Ricky. A ride on the hood of a car dragging my bicycle. Lucky to not have had a scratch. Janice. We had someone break into our house while we were sleeping. Linda. Every day biking around dodging crazy taxi drivers. Man, sounds like driving in Japan is dangerous. Almost everyone I've talked to who served there has had a biking accident. Gotta be careful of that. Kirk. One day, two young-looking girls came to our Eikaiwa English conversation class. I was teaching the advanced class, so I didn't have a chance to talk with them until after the class was over. I asked them if they were junior high students, which made the entire class start laughing. It turned out that they were actually college students who were older than I was. On the other hand, they thought that I was 28, which I thought was pretty funny. It took a while to get used to how young Japanese people look. The other funny experience was when we had to use a public bath when we went to a conference in Morioka, and a Japanese member of the mission presidency mentioned in my branch's sacrament meeting 2 weeks later about how nervous and uncomfortable I had been there. Eric. I was still a pretty young missionary, fourth transfer maybe. My companion and I were walking down a street in the evening and it was pretty empty. We finally saw someone walking towards us, and I looked for something to start a conversation with. I noticed he was holding a bouquet of flowers, so I approached him and said, "I like your flowers, where are you headed?" He told me he was heading to Ososhiki, which translates to funeral in Japanese. But I heard Sotsuyoshiki, which means graduation. I began clapping and congratulating him, and after he glared at me for a couple seconds, I asked him to repeat himself. That's when I understood what he said. I basically turned tail and left as fast as I could. That's so sad. Kaz, pressing the emergency button in the bathroom, I thought it was the button to flush the toilet. People came rushing over thinking I fell in or something. Kevin, one day we rode our bikes to the top of a mountain on preparation day in our suit clothes. It took all day. We ended up coming down the mountain in the dark. The members didn't believe us at church the next day, thinking it was impossible. But here's what's funny. I had starved to save up money to buy a camera and had just made the purchase, so I was excited to take it with me in my dendu proselyting bag up the mountain. Coming back down the mountain fairly fast around the turn, my tire caught some small rocks and sent me sliding across a turnout, landing under a guardrail with my bag underneath me. The bag caught me and kept me from sliding under the rail and over a cliff to the bottom. My suit pants were shredded and my legs were bleeding, but because I landed on my bag protected the rest of me. The other two elders jumped off their bikes worried that I was pretty damaged, but they couldn't help but laugh that I was laying there all bloody and torn up, and all I could say was, my camera, is my camera okay?" They never let me live it down the rest of my mission. Michael. The word for genocide and establish are very close in how they sound. It gets awkward when you're trying to explain that Christ made sure that his true church was genocided rather than established. Christopher. Had a companion from Okinawa who's the branch president. We were out knocking doors and the gentleman started yelling at us and told my companion to go back to America, since my Japanese was easier to understand than his. My companion was dumbfounded and told the guy, "I don't even speak English." Darren. Wankasobu in Morioka, I think. The lady at the restaurant throwing more noodles into my bowl before I could get the lid on. Eric. My first area, I was trying hard to study the language. We were meeting with a male investigator and I messed up a grammar principle. I attempted to say, "Let's meet next week," but instead I said, "Let's love next week." Both my trainer and the investigator laughed pretty hard at that one. Morgan. Riding my bike in Sakata on the ditch covers during the rainy season. The ditches beside the sidewalk were overflowing and one of the concrete slabs was missing. My front tire dropped into the ditch and I catapulted into the water. Colby. I once saw children walking home from school and one girl about 8 years old was being pestered by a boy following her and hitting her with his umbrella. Just as we were wondering if we should intercede, the girl suddenly turned and beat the living daylights out of the boy with her own umbrella. We thought it was best to just move along. An elder was having a party at the English class we taught because he was going home. When a member ran up to throw a pie in his face, a departing missionary tradition in the mission, he ducked and instead hit the face of an English student who was already notoriously angry all the time. Oh, that's awkward. Paul. Running over my companion on my bicycle. Christine. Games we played with the elders. They once hung our bikes from a light post. We thanked them with cookies made with salt instead of sugar and donuts filled with umeboshi and wasabi. Humor is an important part of endurance as well as a means of uniting a district as friends. Joseph, me going out in the snow in my shorts, having seen snow at my front door for the first time in my life. Saori, we drew each other's faces at some district meeting or something. They all turned out right on and funny. Oh, how we loved each other. Teresa, in our Mori, going into the church to teach a lesson and coming out to a bike basket full of snow. Or talking to a man in Japanese just to find out he was Korean and he thought I was Japanese. We ended up talking in English. Ricky, accidental swap of words. Kawaii versus kawaii. Trying to compliment a beautiful baby. Janice, a funny experience was dressing up like Japanese high school students and singing a song for a talent show. Linda, in Aomori, during the winter one time, our toilet froze up overnight. It was the longest trip to the church ever to use the bathrooms. Carol, in Ruoka, we were riding our bikes in a snowstorm. The snow was blowing sideways, so when we got home, only one side of our body was covered in snow. Kirk, even though I didn't see any of my investigators get baptized, there were many spiritual experiences throughout my mission. Watching a member give her first testimony in sacrament meeting, hearing about an investigator's son having his prayer answered, and reading a scripture that made a less active tear up were all small but powerful experiences. The great thing is that they can continue after coming home as you see those you served with continue to progress on in the gospel. Eric, on one particular fast Sunday, my companion and I were out tracting until 8 p.m. We'd been tracting since noon that day, and we hadn't been able to talk to anyone. We were both pretty discouraged and tired, but we decided to knock just one more house. A family greeted us at the door, and we were able to teach the entire first discussion. They later became investigators, and the feeling was so much sweeter because we had fasted and worked our tails off that day. I learned a lot about faith, the power of fasting and prayer, and putting my trust in the Lord. Kaz, hearing investigators pray for the first time, seeing investigators progress, growing spiritually with companions. Troy, praying for miracles and watching doors open, even if it didn't always lead to baptism. Kevin, my companion and I had a rough couple of weeks with no success whatsoever, not even getting someone to hear an introduction to the gospel. We prayed and felt inspired to move to a different area. We worked there all day with no success. At the end of the day, we were about to leave and felt impressed to knock on one more door at a house at the far end of the street, sitting somewhat by itself. We prayed about it and felt impressed to go there. When we knocked, a woman answered who said she'd been praying and waiting for us to come. She shared some amazing dreams she had and listened to our message. She was baptized shortly thereafter. It was late. This is from Michael. It was late, but we had 10 to 20 minutes before we really needed to be home. Instead of just going home, we decided to knock on doors around our neighborhood. Found a humble man who eventually was baptized merely because we didn't turn in for the night. We showed the Lord that we were willing, and He showed the way and provided a prepared man in our path. Christopher, being hospitalized with stomach issues, I ended up sharing a room with the grandfather/father of a couple members, daughter and her 2 sons. The older son wanted to go on a mission, but the grandfather was raising a huge stink. When they figured out I was an LDS missionary, they were very kind, never told me they were related to the members, and the grandmother took good care of me. Lots of missionaries visited me, as did the mission president and his wife. The visitors would always be warm and kind to the other people in the room. One guy was in a coma, then the couple across from me, and a couple of other guys were in for a day or so. I was in for just over a week. After I got released, I felt very strongly to ride back up and give a Book of Mormon to the couple with my testimony in it. When I arrived, the grandfather was asleep. I gave it to his wife and thanked her for her kindness and bore my testimony. The grandfather passed later that day, never woke up from the nap. His last words to his wife were how impressed he was with the missionaries, and that if that is what his grandson wanted to become, he should do it, and he wanted to learn more about the gospel. That's awesome. Darren, my second Christmas in Japan was special. The first wasn't. Finding a lost member of the church when we got lost trying to find a member's house, giving the member a Book of Mormon and seeing how much he cherished having it at that time of the year. I can still see his face. Eric, spending the last month of my mission training a new elder straight from the missionary training center. I tried teaching him everything I learned over 2 years in that short period. Because of that, We were tracting on our last night together before reporting to the mission home and found a family who eventually joined the church. That's great. Morgan, during a special fast weekend, we were reading the scriptures, fasting and praying for our companions, our investigators, and our testimonies. During that weekend, I found the Lord and found my testimony. Tracting some apartments in the rain. Last building, last door, top floor. Invited inside, and a young lady was interested to hear the gospel. Sent the sister missionaries. Her husband was very opposed to the visits. However, one day he saw the Book of Mormon sitting on the table and started to read it. I had transferred to another city, but had asked to learn more. They were both baptized a bit later. Colby, praying with an investigator that an earthquake would stop, and it did immediately. Baptizing a man in his bathtub at home. He could not leave his home because of health reasons. And afterward, when the mission president was confirming him in his living room, both my companion and I could see through our closed eyelids. The light in the dim room increased to the point that it seemed like the sun was in the room too. It died down and returned to normal just as the confirmation was ending. That's cool. Paul, showing up for a dinner with a family of 7 people by a very strange coincidence. They had made an appointment with some other people who never showed up. We happened to knock on the door at exactly the same time the dinner started, so we were invited instead. The entire family ended up being baptized. That's so cool. Christine, the mission was an incredible and transforming experience for me. I'm deeply grateful for the time I was given to serve in Japan. There are so many experiences. I felt the love of God for people I had known so briefly. I was given the opportunity to truly mourn and rejoice with God's children. Joseph, giving my bike to an investigating family as I left Japan. Saori, when I was a green bean in Aomori, I had an awesome, fun senpai, senior companion. She was kind and fun, but didn't follow the rules. I loved her and had so much fun together until one of the investigators who wanted to get baptized all of a sudden decided not to see us anymore. That was devastating to me because I loved her so much. I asked why she did that in my prayer. She didn't even talk to us anymore. And it came to me that we need to follow the commandments and rules in order for our investigators to receive the maximum blessings from heaven. My dode didn't want to follow the rule at all then. And next transfer, I got transferred to Koriyama and got a brand new senior missionary companion who was just 2 months older than I was as a missionary. We both decided to follow 100% of the rules and worked really hard. We worked so hard and saw miracles. We loved and still love each other. My dode showed me how to work with the power of heaven. Since then, I became a real missionary. After my mission, I got a letter from Aomori. It was from the investigator who dropped off. She wrote to me to let me know that she got baptized from one of my good friends, an elder. I thank the Lord forever for his love and mercy. Teresa, just like the pioneers who had heavenly help pushing their handcarts when they were exhausted, I gained my own personal knowledge that there are guardian angels there to help. Ricky, being proposed to by a real friend who really liked me, but I did everything right and moral as a missionary about her crush. As I witnessed some who broke mission moral rules, and some showroom fellow missionaries judged me wrongly and were cruel to my friend. That's too bad. Janice, so many spiritual experiences. Most involved the great joy we felt in people listening to our message and then being baptized. One young woman was baptized and eventually went on a mission and has been married in the temple. What a wonderful thing. Linda, wow, so many. The first baptism I experienced of someone whom we had found and taught. Well, there you go. That was a lot of stories. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed those stories from the Sendai mission. If you're a returned missionary and you're willing to share some stories, you can go to preparetoserve.com/survey and complete it there and help build our resource on preparetoserve.com for pre-missionaries and returned missionaries and their families. If you're willing to be video interviewed about your mission, we'd love to video interview you in Utah sometime. You could just message us through the Facebook page or Prepare to Serve website or YouTube channel. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a wonderful day. Gospel's true. Love you guys. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.